COVID-19 situation, and it's really been an interesting 6 weeks watching how different people and businesses respond to this. But the reality is the things are starting to turn back to, you hear a lot of talk about reopening the country, reopening Texas, reopening Dallas, and getting businesses back running again and moving forward in the way that they need to. And so the question is, what are the things we should be thinking about now, wherever we're at, given whatever circumstance you have in your business? And I've been on a number of different calls with people literally around the globe, and it's interesting to see the different approaches, the approaches of countries in Europe versus Australia versus the Eastern countries, Japan, China, and then of course the West, Canada, U.S., Mexico. And it's really interesting to see the different approaches and perspectives on this. But what we're finding as we move forward through this scenario or this situation is that everybody's business model is being stressed. Every business model is being stressed. Everything from B2C, consumer-oriented businesses where you're dependent upon foot traffic and people coming in and buying your products and services, to restaurants. The whole consumer side has been severely impacted. And the folks that I talk to in that sector, I think the business to consumer that requires that human interaction has probably been impacted more than any other segment. Some of the B2B that serve those segments have been impacted also, but the B2B that are in the what are considered the essential businesses, some of those are actually thriving right now. And so the reality is everybody is facing a new dynamic or a new normal around their business model and what's working and what's not working. So one of the first things that we're seeing and that we're suggesting to do right now is to step back and evaluate your business model. The business model is really made up of who is your target customer, and it could be another business, it could be a consumer, and what are their needs now and going to be in the future. Because a lot of the things that we've done from a business standpoint are based on traditional business models. The people walking into a store, or people walking into a restaurant. And we've seen some restaurants that have thrived by having the takeout and the delivery capabilities. As a matter of fact, some of that was beginning to trend even before COVID-19 showed up, with organizations like Grubhub and DoorDash and some of those. So the one thing that you got to keep in mind is convenience. How do you make what you do for your customer convenient? Okay, because anything that can cut time out of the process or save money and deliver a great customer experience, those are some of the things you need to think about when you start thinking about who you're doing business with and who you want to do business with in the future. The business model also, you have to look at the financial side of that, and that's one of the biggest things that we're encouraging people to do, is do a deep dive on the financial business model that you operate under. What assumptions are you making about your business model? What assumptions are you making about suppliers and cost? A great example would be if you are in the plastics business. Okay, one of the necessary items for plastics is petroleum. A lot of people don't realize that, but it takes petroleum to create plastic, and that if you're in the plastic container business and you've been paying $50 a barrel for oil from the suppliers, but now oil is just right at zero or a little bit above zero, what does that do to your cost structure? Okay, and then how do you leverage that buying capability, um, and be able to offer a greater value at a different economic model. So looking at your economic model is really, really important. And that's one of those things where so a deep dive on how you're structured, because one of the other things that most people are not talking about but is coming and is going to be an issue is the amount of debt that organizations are taking on right now, because organizations are taking the PPP loans and they're getting the SBA loans because they've lowered the bar, lowered the standards, and allowing people to get this money. That is still obligation on the part of the company, and you're going to have to pay it back. Now, they talk about forgiveness and all this other stuff, and there are going to be some very specific rules around forgiveness, being able to uh, get that forgiven by the government. However, the speculation is only about 40% of companies are going to be eligible for the forgiveness, and because they're not going to be very disciplined or have the information that they're going to need to be able to get that forgiveness of those loans, which means now you've added a degree of debt that you're going to have to service with your economic business model. So keeping that in mind, really understanding what that's going to look like. Um, so in the what now, this is a great opportunity for business leaders to clean up the mess inside their companies. If you've got issues with people, if you've got issues with process, if you've got issues with technology, if you've got issues related to your business development, things along those lines, this is the perfect time to clean up the mess. And so looking at your business processes, because one of the excuses we hear all the time is, I don't have time. We're too busy. Well, you're not busy now. So take this opportunity to look at all the ways you do what you do and evaluate them and say, what do we need to change to be more efficient, to maybe cut waste out of the process, to turn them into a lean process? What are you doing to begin to take advantage of some of this time? So process is one of those areas where the more aggressive organizations are really taking advantage of this and getting their process. They're evaluating their process and they're cleaning them up. So I would take a serious look at our processes. One of the other things that's becoming real evident is that the relationship we have with our customers are going to change. Okay, they are going to change because customers are realizing that there are different ways of doing business. Vendors are realizing that there's a different way of doing business, and so the architecture of the customer relationship is something you need to be looking at right now. Okay, this is a great opportunity to have one-on-one conversations. In our last webinar, we talked about the need to talk to customers every single day, which should strengthen and enhance the relationship and engender some loyalty on the part of the customer. But now is a good time to pick their brain also and ask them, what do you like about doing business with us? What do you not like about doing business with us? How can we better serve you? Where can we add more value? What do you wish we provided for you that we currently don't provide? This is a perfect opportunity to have those conversations with those customers, because a lot of times they don't have time either. And so it's been real interesting, the openness of customers to have those conversations with their their vendors. So I would look at also, how do we add value in this new customer relationship? And there's lots of different ways to add value. You can add value by providing your services at a lower cost, because you've cut cost out of your process. You can add value by providing information. This is probably one of the biggest things that you can do, is look for what is the information that customers need about our products and services that we could provide that would add value to the deal. Let me give you an example. There's a huge growth in the online meal world, like the Hello Fresh and Freshly and some of these that prepare meals and ship them to your home. And I was having a conversation with one of those organizations, and in looking at their website and how you manage the menus, there's instructions on how to do that stuff is not intuitive. So in talking to the customers, they said, yeah, we've heard this a lot. And so the question is, if you're hearing this a lot, what are you doing about it? How are you making it easy for people to do business with you? Because like it or not, the technological capabilities of the entire population has grown substantially over the last 6 to 8 weeks, because we've been forced to. Okay, people are going to school utilizing technology. People are conducting business and meetings and sales calls and services via technology. uh, this has forced us to look at ways to gain that leverage. And the longer the pandemic goes, the more and more we're going to become dependent upon those technologies. So what that means is there's opportunities in that arena. Okay, there are huge opportunities for companies to pivot to being a technologically based organization. Okay, leveraging technology on all fronts to acquire new customers, manage the customer relationship, and communicate and collaborate in ways that we've never even thought about before. There's people that struggle utilizing some of this technology. So education around the utilization of technology is growing at a very rapid rate. So those are some opportunities that are out there. But one of the biggest things also that we're seeing is a shift in the way that things are going to change in the workplace. Um, there's a lot of organizations right now that are evaluating whether they need office space anymore. So imagine you're a commercial real estate developer or realtor, and you make your living by leasing out office space to large organizations, but they just discovered, because of the stay at home in place, they don't necessarily need the office space that they used to use or take advantage of. Okay, what's going to happen the next time those leases come up and come around? Okay, so organizations are looking at what is the work environment. The second thing is, how do you create a safe environment? How do you create a safe environment for your team? Because some of these people, depending upon their health situation, uh, you may have to create a safe place for them to work. Okay, to make sure that the environment is clean and sterilized. And so there's going to be some changes in the way that we set up the work environment, and but also there's going to be some changes in the relationship between the employer and the employee. That's another big shift that we're seeing, and that employers need to be thinking about what happens when people begin to come back to work. Okay, and there's a number of issues that go with that, especially if schools don't reopen right away. Okay. Now, most of the schools in our area have basically said they're not going to reopen this year. Okay. Which means we're into an early summer, which is fine. But unless you've planned for childcare or you have some solutions around that, now we've got some changes in the way that people work, which means that people working from home are not only having to do their work, but they're also having to take care of their kids. And so one of the growth areas that we expect to see is the use of in-home nannies or people to work with the kids or take care of the kids while people are trying to work. And so there's some shifts and pivots related to that. But there's a guy by the name of Jason Fried who wrote a book called Rework. And Jason and his team were the people that were responsible for the development of the online software called Basecamp. And they developed several other solutions, but Basecamp is their main solution. And they run a multi-million-dollar company with about 13 people all distributed. Okay, these people are scattered all over the world. So what this means is that now employers understanding that people can work remote, now the need for employees to be local goes away, which changes the whole dynamic of the workforce. Okay, you can have somebody on your team from Seattle, Washington, or from Washington D.C., or from Corpus Christi, because we're learning how to do work and accomplish what we need to accomplish without having to be physically in a common location. So it changes the whole dynamic of the workforce, but it also changes the dynamic of the market. Because when you had a business that was dependent upon people being in a locale, being locally available, now all of a sudden your customer base is national or even international. So how do you begin to tap into those other markets where you don't play? See, we're seeing this technology begin to open some of those doors. So as we evaluate the business model, we need to be thinking not just the way we used to do business, but also the way we could potentially do business and could potentially grow and could potentially find other business opportunities in other locations that are not close to us. Okay, so a lot of my clients that I work with are now looking outside of their local area for customers, because they're realizing that with transportation being an essential form and being organizations being very dependent upon transportation, being able to move products is we're learning new ways to do that and about managing expectations. So looking at the workforce, looking at the customer base outside of your local market is something that you need to be thinking about right now. Okay, where are the markets that have the highest concentration of our potential customers, and are we establishing a presence there? Because the reality is, all bets are off. Okay, we're no longer bound by where we are located in order to find and do business with people. So technology changes, customer relationship changes, business model changes, the financial economic changes that are out there. Those are all very, very important things to be thinking about right now in regards to what do we do next. Okay, but the other thing that I think is absolutely the most important of all of this is being open-minded and willing to change. See, I think the biggest barrier holding companies back from being able to pivot is because they have this desire for things to go back to the way they used to be. And the reality is, based on all the research and what all the experts are saying, things will never be like they were. Okay? We are going to be living in a new world where uh, sanitation and social distancing, these things are going to become a part of our life, like it or not. And so how do we take advantage of that? How do we leverage that? How do we deal with that? And it's getting those right mindsets around change that are going to help organizations survive and then thrive on the other side of this. So having that right mindset, and I was on the phone Monday with an expert in Canada around how do you make those mindset pivots that you need to make as a business leader or a business owner. And it's really it's coming to grips with the fact that you can make a business pivot without totally abandoning what you were doing in the past, and you do that through what's called association. And what association is just taking a step up from the business you're in. Okay, so for example, if you're in the business of pest control, for example. So what is pest control? It's the elimination of pests, typically either from a commercial property or from a residential home. And the way that they pivoted several years back to realizing that if you can create a boundary around the entity, around the business or around the home, that it's actually more effective to keep pests out than to kill the pests once they're in. Okay, it's actually more effective. So they began to work on these outside treatments of homes and facilities. Well, when you look at pest control as a business, you have trucks, you have people that apply the chemicals and the resources. And so they stepped up and said, really, what we are is in the distribution of chemicals. We're in chemical distribution business at the residential and commercial level. So then they began to say, what else could we do utilizing our resources, our people, our equipment to take advantage of this situation? So what these guys did was they stepped back and said, a lot of businesses and a lot of homes now are going to need regular disinfectant. And what they have is a fog that basically kills everything that is germ borne in an area. And they can come in for a few dollars and disinfect an entire office or an entire home utilizing their existing equipment and resources. And because they took that step up and realized that, while pest control is part of chemical distribution, they were able to make this pivot by setting that up. That's going to equate to almost $100,000 a month in additional revenue for them. They still have their pest control business. They're still doing pest control. But they now have this new business opportunity because they were able to step up and look at what are the other opportunities at that next level up. Okay, so part of this is, again, being creative in looking at, how do you leverage those things that you have. Give you another example. There's a printing company that I know of who stepped back, and they had a niche printing capability. Well, they stepped back and says, we have these digital printers, we have these people that are great at layout, we have these things over here, and there's a huge need for this particular type of printing. So what they did was they were able to replace the declining business that they had in their niche with this opportunity in this new niche, which is growing. All because they stepped back and said, how do we leverage our resources, our equipment, our people in order to serve a different market or a different opportunity? So part of that is being open-minded, being willing to change. Those are a couple of really good examples that I've seen in the last 6 weeks where organizations have been able to pivot. So the biggest thing now that organizations need to do is begin to plan for what third and fourth quarter are going to look like. Okay, we're 20 something days into the first quarter, the second quarter. We need to start looking at third and fourth quarter. Okay, because the experts are telling us mid to end of third quarter, early fourth quarter is when we should begin to see things start to turn. Okay, and so we need to be positioned and ready. Now, there's three things that are going to happen as a result of the pandemic. Okay, number one, there's going to be an excessive amount of really good talent available on the street, because some really high-end A players that were working for organizations that didn't survive are going to be looking for jobs. Okay, so if talent has been one of the things you've had to deal with in the past, acquiring really good top-end talent, not only are there's going to be a number of really good A caliber players available, but the cost of that talent is actually going to be down a little bit because these people are going to be looking for jobs. And so you've got an opportunity to bridge the talent gap inside your organization. One of the things that we recommend is that you do a talent evaluation at least every 90 days. And basically what that talent evaluation is looking at your team and looking at how they align around your core values and how productive they are. And if they're highly productive and they highly align with your core values, we call those A players. Those A players are your thoroughbreds. These are the people that get stuff done. You don't have to do a whole lot to lead them. They're self-motivated. They get the work done. These are the people, if you had a whole team full of these people, you'd be unstoppable. Okay? And you want to have that group of A players. Your B players are the people that align with your core values, but their productivity is not where it needs to be. And so these are folks that can grow through training and development into A players. They may be new, they may lack some experience, but through some training and some coaching, they can grow into A players. But they've got the alignment with your culture, with your core values. The people that are highly productive but not necessarily aligned with your values, in other words, their behaviors are inconsistent with your values, we call those BC players. They're very productive, but they are kind of the bad apple in the bunch in terms of working as a team player and treating people the way that they need to be treated. And what we recommend there is those people need a behavior change. They need to be made aware that their style is creating problems and that they need to change the way they behave. And you give them a period of time to make those changes. But if you have people that are low in the core values and low in productivity, we call those C players. Okay, we call them donkeys. Okay, and those people are the people you need to exit out of the organization. Okay, because thoroughbreds, your A players, don't like working with donkeys. And by the way, donkeys don't like working with thoroughbreds either. And so doing an evaluation of your team and really assessing where people are can help you then recognize these are the folks that I need to move out of the organization, and these are the folks, this opens up the opportunity for me to get those A players that I want. Okay, so the move around people is one of the biggest things that we're seeing. The second thing that's going to happen is you're going to have an opportunity to pick up customers that you haven't been able to get to because their vendor that does what you do is not going to make it. Okay, so we need to be looking at our competition and really recognizing who are those people that are on the edge or even out of business. Okay, it's really interesting to see the speculation of who's going to survive in the retail space. Okay, because I read an article yesterday that said basically the department store is dead. Okay, companies like Macy's, J.C. Penney, those kinds of organizations where you're dependent upon people coming into a store, it's going to go away because people have adjusted to shopping online. All right, so those pivots, those organizations may not survive. And with that in mind, who of your competition either is so highly leveraged or doesn't have the ability to make the pivots? They may have had all their eggs in one customer basket, and that customer, basically stopped working with them. They have no recourse but to shut down. And so there's going to be some customer opportunities that are going to come up as a result of what's happened. And so you want to have your ears to the ground and be looking at your competition, who is really on the edge, and then where do you have customer opportunities that you could take advantage of. Okay. The third area that you want to pay attention to are supply chain vendors. Those people that supply products up and down the supply chain. One of the things that this has done is it's forced companies to begin to look at alternative suppliers because their primary supplier may not be able to deliver what they need. And so you need to potentially have two suppliers for the products that you need so that you have a backup situation if your primary either doesn't make it or can't get the things that they need because their suppliers are backed up. So supply chains are going to get disrupted in all of this. So look at your vendors and make sure that you are building sustainable supply chains. And that's really what we're looking at. So there's going to be talent on the street. There's going to be customers to be had. There's going to be supply chain disruptions. So you want to make sure you've got good sustainable vendors. But the other thing that's out there, kind of a 2A to the list, is also there's going to be some companies that could be very viable acquisition targets. And that's something else that we're seeing is those customers that are in good solid position coming out of this could be in position to acquire some of their competition or maybe even some goods and services that before it was cost prohibitive, but now you could pick up the organization for pennies on the dollar. So we're seeing some shifts and some opportunities around that as well. So you want to keep those things in mind. So